Hey guys, Nick here with D&D Character Creations, and it's our first video! Woohoo! So for today, we're gonna start with something kind of simple. I would give this, a beginner to intermediate kind of level of difficulty, but we're gonna be starting with Fighter. So our Fighter build is gonna be an interesting one, I think. We're gonna be using D&D Beyond for our character creation. We're going to be using the player's handbook basically for everything in this build. We're going to be using standard array. You might be able to roll your stats in your campaign, but standard array gives us some strengths and some weaknesses. And in our role play, weaknesses are good. They allow us to not, yeah, we're heroes, but might not be great at everything. And that allows also our friends at the table who are better at some things than us the spotlight. And that's always good. So we're going to start off here with our fighter. I've already got them to level 12, which is going to be the basis, the max of our level for today. But we're going to go into the builder, and we're going to see how we started off. So here we are in the builder. We're a fighter, and we're going to look at our core traits. So for our first traits, we're going to do athletics and history. Athletics kind of gets us to be able to lift things and jump and do all that athletic stuff. History is going to be a little bit interesting because we're going to be focusing on intelligence with this character. And if you have some experience with D&D, you might know where I'm leaning. Maybe one or two options. But history is really good because it leans on intelligence. So I think that's going to be a really good marriage for that. Fighting style, we're going to do protection. I really want this character to be focused on protecting people. This is someone whose core identity, I think, is going to be about saving their comrades from danger. And we're going to get into a lot of that in regards to their belief that if I can control the space, if I control my enemies and how they are going after my allies, then I can protect them better. What better way than protection, which requires us to use a shield, so we will be sword and board for this build. Sword and board, for folks who don't know, means that I have a melee weapon in one hand and a shield in the other, and I'm just going to go to town. That's pretty simple. And the shield also gets us an additional bit of AC when we're using it, so we're going to be a little bit more difficult to hit. So scrolling down, we're going to get Second Wind, which, it's a great little bit of healing. With the new 2024 mechanics, it gives us a little bit of extra as well that we can use for later on for re-rolls of certain ability checks. For mastery, because we're sword and board, we're going to stick with 3 great one-handed weapons. We're going to look at the longsword, sap. Sap allows us to give, when we hit an enemy, give them disadvantage on their next attack roll. Great for protecting our allies. Battle Axe allows us to topple, which means we knock them prone, we knock them down. When an enemy is knocked prone, attacks against them have advantage. It also requires them to take half their movement speed to get back up, and that decreases their movement. Again, so topple is really good for that. Push allows us, as it says, to push an enemy away. When we hit them, they can be moved 10 feet away. So if I wanted to get somebody away from my friend, that I might be using the Warhammer for that. So the next thing we're going to look at is our background. Guard is great because we're going to be protecting people. So that gives us perception, investigation. We're going to be looking at the alert feat, which allows us to use our proficiency bonus for our initiative. It allows us to swap initiative. So if we get a really good one, but we really need one of our allies to go first, we can swap it with them. So that's really good. And we're not really going to be going too much into dexterity. Dexterity helps us with our initiative rolls. So this gets us a little bit of a bump when our dexterity is probably not going to be super great. And then for ability scores, we're going to scroll down here. We're going to look at strength and intelligence. So for strength, we're going to do a 1. So if we look here, we're going to do strength is 1. Intelligence is going to be 2. So now we're going to go over to our species. I love Goliath for this build for a lot of reasons. And we'll get into that in sort of the role play. But what do we get with Goliath? We get a speed of 30 feet. We get giant ancestry. So Goliaths, through the history, are basically, they have giant blood in them. And with your Goliath's, ancestry, we can choose which type of giant that is. Now, I think a lot of people might look at hill giant for this, and that's that might be, it's pretty good. But for this one, I'm going to do cloud giants, the cloud giant, the clouds jaunt. That gets us a teleport, and the teleport is really good because we want to be mobile. What if our friends are outside of our reach? Maybe we got away from them because we charged into battle, but there's somebody behind them and we need to get back. So it allows us to move not just horizontally but vertically. And I feel like from a tool set perspective, I want people to have a lot of options outside of just combat, right? Need to get to that second story window? Boom, I'm up. Need to get over a thing, or through a window and I don't see a door, I want to get out. Boom, as long as I can see it, I can teleport to it. So I feel like that's going to be really good for this character. With that, we also get large form. Large form, as it says, lets us become large. We're typically a medium character in size, which means that we are within a 5-foot square. But when we become large, now we're in a 10 by 10 square. It means our reach is a little bit longer. So like instead of hitting things in the next square from us, now we're hitting things a little bit farther away. We have a little bit greater reach. We kind of take up a little bit more space. What if we wanted to defend a doorway? Well, we go large, or maybe it's a gateway that's 10 feet wide. Oh, go large, and now we're blocking it. We're protecting our friends. We're shielding the people behind us. There's a lot of interesting things with large form. Maybe, now that we're large, we can lift people up to a window. With our teleport, that's just us. But if we want to get people, over a wall, we get large. We can move them over a wall. Like, there's a lot of things that we can do with large form, not just in combat. Powerful build gives us advantage against grapple checks. That's great situational stuff. Languages, I picked giant because we do, Goliath speak giant. I also add draconic, and I feel like the enemies of giants are typically dragons. So maybe with the backstory of this character, maybe their enemies are dragons, or maybe dragonborn. Maybe there's a rivalry there. So knowing your enemy's language would be good. So I said that we'd be starting with standard array. Standard array, for folks that don't know, it's in the PHP. It just means that there's an array of stats, and we put these in, these set numbers in different spots on our character sheet. If you roll your stats in your game, great. Maybe you want to redo those stats that we said before, but for this, we kind of want to stick with standard array just for everybody. It helps with different tables. So we're going to do 15 strength with our +1 gets us to 16 at level 1. We're going to put our 12 into dexterity, gives us a little bit more on initiative. Constitution is always great because hit points. We want to be bigger, bulkier. So the 14 goes into constitution. Intelligence is a 13 with our +2 from our species. That gets us to 15. Wisdom is 8. Charisma is 10. I know that a lot of people want, I'm a hero, I shouldn't have any weaknesses, but weaknesses give us something. That's a role-play mechanic too, something that we can lean into. The other thing is that D&D is a cooperative game. So maybe you have low wisdom, but that means that the person who has high wisdom, when there's a wisdom check or a wisdom required ability, let them have the spotlight. You're going to be looking at things that are strength-based and intelligence-based, and maybe that's your time to shine. But this allows someone else to shine in their own way. Maybe it's a cleric or a druid or a monk. Something that really uses wisdom. for like tracking or for insight. Maybe they're trying to get through a lie, and that's okay. It's okay to have weaknesses, and we're going to go into how we can do that, how we can show that weakness in the second segment. All right, so we're going to go, and now it's our inventory. So that's our level 1 character. All right, so we'll go back to as we level up. So when we level up, we're going to get action surge at level 2, which allows us to take a second action. So we can take a magic action and then take a attack action or 2 attack actions. There's not going to be much magical about our character, so we're predominantly going to be taking another attack action. So that means, we attack with our melee weapon, we action surge, get another attack. As we level up, we'll get more weapon swings per attack action. A fighter gets up to 4, but for this build, we're only going to get a max of 3. So that means 3 attacks, action surge, another 3 attacks. We're going to get tactical mind. This is something I said, like when we can expend the use of our second wind to let us roll something to perhaps not fail an ability check. Really good for, again, if we need to do that insight, or if we need to do that history check, or if we need to, maybe the person's not around and we kind of need a little bit of an edge. This kind of gets us to it. A lot of people might use guidance, to help you kind of push your abilities higher. This is a way that a fighter can do it. And then at level 3, we get our subclass. So we went intelligence. Some of you might be thinking, oh, this person's going to go, Eldritch Knight, which is intelligence based. But we're going to be going for the Psi Warrior. The Psi Warrior, for folks who are unfamiliar with that, are kind of like your Jedi, or from Stranger Things. You might look at those people that use telekinetic abilities. Basically anybody who is using their mind to affect the world around them. Levitation, sometimes you'll see like the nosebleeds and stuff like that as they're straining. So Psi Warrior for me is one of my favorites. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with a Psi Warrior. So we're going to look at your psionic powers. So, you're going to get a bunch of D6s. You'll get 4 D6s at level 3, and then the die size gets bigger, and the number of die that you have also increase. So at 12, we're going to have a D10 max for our psionic die, and a number is going to be 8. And there's a bunch of things that will use that die. There's one thing that gets us additional damage, so the additional damage gets bigger as the die size gets larger. There are abilities that we can only use once per day or short rest unless we expend a die, so that allows us to do more things. And so at level 3, we're going to get Protective Field. So remember what I said about protection. This person's really going to be protective of other people. So, as a reaction, when I see someone get hit, I can expend a die, and then the damage that they got dealt is lowered by the amount that we roll on that die. And what this is kind of doing is it could be kind of like a small heal, but if we're preventing damage, then that means that person doesn't go down, then that means they get to act on their turn. So preventing damage can, in some situations, really be helpful. At low levels, is a D6 going to be big? We're adding our intelligence modifier. So at this point, our intelligence modifier 15 is 2. So we're at least saving them 3 points of damage. And as we go, I think at this point, we're going to get a max of 18 for intelligence. That's a +4. Out of 10, it's, between 5 and 14 damage. It might help, but we'll see. Psionic Strike allows us to add a little bit of force damage onto our roll. And then telekinetic movement allows us to move an object that's large or smaller, 30 feet horizontally. Also can be a willing target, so we can pull an ally to us, and if we recall, forced movement, when we pull someone to us, doesn't give enemies opportunity attacks. So if someone gets away or if someone drops off a cliff or whatever, we can yank them over to us, or we can prevent them from falling. Maybe there's a lot of things that we can do with telekinetic movement. I always like it if we see like a crate, and we can throw it in front of a door so we can block the door, or maybe it's a rock or a column. Really think about like what's in the environment that I can use. I just feel like telekinetic movement has a lot of interesting things. At level 4, we get another weapon mastery. I put it into glaive, dealer's choice on this one, but I really feel like we're going to be sticking with one-handed weapons. So this is kind of a throwaway. At level 4, we also get ability score improvement. I'm going to take with this build telepathic. Telepathic is going to bump our intelligence to 16, which means now we prevent 3 hit points of damage plus our die. We add additional 3 points of damage plus the die when we use our telekinetic thrust. And telepathic allows us to do a little bit of telepathy. It's a one-way telepathy, so like you can talk to someone else. They can't really respond to you telepathically, but it's a little bit of it can be a little bit of a fun nuance. And again, we'll get into that in the second part. But let's say you're next to a friend and you can be like telepathically say like, "Do you believe this guy?" Like, or maybe you can be like, "I think he's lying," without saying it. So you can kind of have like a little bit of a conversation. But it also gets us a spell, and that spell is Detect Thoughts. Detect Thoughts is really great. We can use it once per long rest. It's going to be based off our intelligence modifier for a DC. And what that kind of does is without doing any saving throws, so right off the bat, if we feel like we just want to learn something about a creature, we can use Detect Thoughts to kind of read the surface level of their mind. What are they kind of like just thinking about? We don't need to probe memories. We're just trying to get like a sense of what are they thinking? Are they suspicious of us maybe? The other thing that we get is we can kind of like feel around the space to see, is there another mind that I can't see? Maybe there's somebody invisible and I'm listening for thoughts, or maybe they're hidden. And so I see 4 people, but I'm hearing the thoughts of 5, right? Like as a guard, as a protector, I want to know what the danger is around me. So this is a really nice mechanic. It's situational, but it's really good for like, I want to know, kind of who's out there. So Detect Thoughts gets us that. At level 5, we get an extra attack. So now we're attacking twice per attack action. And when we action surge, we can do another attack. So that's 4 attacks in an action surge. And remember, whenever we hit with an attack, we can use our weapon specializations, whether we're toppling or whether we're with our battle axe, giving disadvantage with our sword, or pushing away with a warhammer. Again, whatever you want with that. Tactical shift. Now, whenever we use our second wind to get us some healing, we can also move up to half our movement speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Kind of allows us to recenter ourselves maybe outside of a threat. At level 6, because we're a fighter, we get an extra ability score improvement. Most people get theirs at 8, but fighters get theirs at 6. And we're going to be going with Shield Master. Again, we're going to be a protector. We're going to have a shield up at all times. So Shield Master is really great because what it means is when I attack with a weapon, I can follow up just as long as I attacked. I don't need to use a bonus action. I can hit them with my shield and I can either push them away or I can knock them prone. What is that? And they have to make it a DC. It's versus, strength versus our strength. But it's really great because now what do I get? I can push you away with my shield after I give you disadvantage if I have my longsword. If I have my warhammer, I can push you away and knock you prone. If I have my battle axe, I can topple you, knocking you prone and then push you away. So again, it's sort of like get away from my friend. Again, we're that protective mentality. Like, I really want you to get away. I want you to get, I knock you down. It's like I'm controlling the situation. Interposed shield is a little interesting rider. Basically, when I'm subject to a dexterity saving throw where I would receive half damage if I succeed, I can interpose my shield and take no damage as long as I was a subject of that attack. So, it might be, there's a lot of different other, I think people have an issue with it because it doesn't, help you with like a fireball or a lightning bolt. But at my table, I would say yes. Like, I would say it's just basically evasion because you took a feat to kind of get it. But talk to your DM about when you can use interposed shield. Tactical master at 7th, telekinetic adept. So at 7th level, now we can take a bonus action and just fly. Now we're at 35 feet of movement because we're Goliath. So now we have a speed of 70 when we fly. If we're in our large form gives us 10 more feet of movement, which meant that now we get 90 feet if we're just a rocket in the air. Telekinetic thrust also means that when we hit someone with our psionic strike, we're dealing some force damage. We can also force them to be knocked prone or transport it 10 feet away horizontally, which is basically push. So at 7th level, everything's kind of coming together for us. We hit someone with our long sword. We do our psionic thrust to basically deal damage and knock them away. And now we can follow up with our shield. If we move up to them, we can knock them prone. We can push them with our weapon, push them again with the telekinetic ability, knock them prone with our shield. There's a lot of things that we can do now with maneuvers, right? We can topple them and push them away. Like we can really mess with things. Like, let's say we're protecting our friend who's next to us, and we could, with that enemy that's close to us, we could push them 10 feet away with our warhammer. We could then follow up 10 feet. We could knock them prone with the telekinetic thrust. And then with our shield, we could push them another 10 feet. That's all in one swing if they fail their multiple saving throws. We've pushed them 20 feet away and knocked them prone. And now we're walking up to them. They got to spend half their movement to get up. And at 30 feet, they're not getting back to our friend. We've successfully moved the enemy out of the range of our friend. That's really great for that protector mentality. At level 8, we're going to upgrade our strength and our intelligence. So at that point, they're going to be 17 and 17. Actually, no, they're going to be 18 and 17 because we got a +1 from Shield Master. At 9, we get Tactical Master, which means that we can replace any weapon mastery that we know with push, sap, or slow onto our weapon. So let's say we have the battle axe. Now it can do topple, or it can do push, or it can do sap, or it can do slow. So with a battle axe, we get a lot of options. And then with Indomitable, when we fail a saving throw, we can re-roll it with a bonus equal to our fighter level. We get another weapon mastery at 10. And at 10, we get Guarded Mind. Now remember, we picked an 8 for our wisdom, which means that we're probably susceptible to being charmed. And now we have resistance to psychic damage. And if we start our round or action charmed, we can just end it by expending a die. Level 10, we get 3 attacks per round. So now with our action surge, we get 6. And then we get our final ability score, which is telekinetic, which means that now our, now we're looking at 18 for strength, 18 for intelligence, and our starting stats have not really changed. So that's the build from 1 to 12. Lots of things to see here. I'm going to move back to the character sheet. And now let's think about the role play around how we're role playing that character. So I want us to get us to a headspace. So let's just think about it this way. Arda Cloudmane sees her friends surrounded by enemies. As she launches herself into the air, flying with gusts of winds, propelling her over to her friends. She lands, almost in like a superhero crouch. She looks around and she says, "Get away from my friends!" as she bellows, charging in with her battle axe and her shield ready. So that's the kind of the entrance that we want to think of. So what happens then? What does Arda do next, right? So she'll come in and she'll take a swipe with her battle axe at one of the enemies that's crowded around her friends, and she'll push them away. And you'll see the pupils of her eyes go cloudy as she manifests more of this wind that pushes her enemy away. Her shield coming down, knocking them down. She goes to the second person, and she knocks them down with a sweeping of her battle axe around their ankles to knock them down. And then again, another push. A third person, she runs at them. She does another push with her blade, her eyes clouding over again, pushing them away, and then pushing them away 20 feet. And she's breathing heavily. "I told you to stay away from my friends." And then action surge, and she's a whirlwind across the battlefield. And in that scenario, what have we used? We used our telekinetic thrust to kind of push people away. We're using our shield. But how are we flavoring it, right? Like psionics, we think of the mind. But with Arda, she's a cloud giant kin. She's a Goliath with cloud giant blood. Her psionic power may not manifest as a mental power. Maybe it manifests as the billowing energy of wind, right? When she flies using her 7th level ability to fly, it's not her mind. It is the wind is propelling her. When she knocks someone down, she's pushing them away, it's the wind. So she's using this cloud giant bloodline not as like her mind, but as like this legacy of the cloud giant. And I think the other thing that we want to think about in terms of Arda's personality is that she's really about her force of will. Like it's not just the wind, but also she's when she uses her telekinetic push, which is what we got at level 12, she's kind of like buffeting them with air. She's controlling the area around her. She's a very forceful person. She's a very, if we look at like her intelligence, she's really cunning. Like she's tactical. When we looked at history, it means that maybe she knows a lot about battles. Maybe she knows a lot about lore of ancient lore about giants or dragons or just battles in general. Maybe she knows how to read a map. Maybe she looks when there's a battle to be fought. She is looking at things and looking at weaknesses. But with that 8 wisdom, maybe she can't read people really well. She takes them at face value. She's not really insightful. If someone says something, she kind of believes it. Maybe there's a naivety to how she comes across. And with that 10 charisma, maybe she's just kind of blunt in how she speaks. She's not she's not ineloquent, but she's not really someone who's going to be charming. Um, so when we look at our statistics and we want to talk about role play, we can really lean into this character who is really smart, educated, very strong, strong-minded, and maybe that strong-minded ability, like that trait, means that because of her low wisdom, she doesn't see things for what they are. And maybe she has to have friends around her to really help her see that someone's lying. Maybe she's protecting her friends. Um, maybe she failed to protect somebody in her youth, or maybe, her village was attacked and she was too young to protect them, or maybe she lost a friend because she failed to protect them. Hard-headedness is something that we say, like, and it can be used negatively, but like in this case, we can just say that she's single-minded to the point where she's really not looking at the greater, she's not really looking into someone and reading their greater intent. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think that having weaknesses like that is perfectly fine. And it helps that, like I said, like those before, the monks, the druids, the clerics, the people who are more insightful can give them that guidance. It gives them the spotlight. It creates relationships. And, it adds to the greater story. And we talk about psionics. Like, maybe you don't like the psionics about it, but you can reskin that, right? So instead of being mind powers, like we said, it could be wind powers. Um, you know, it could be that, when we say it's her mind, but it's her force of will, it's her acting on the area with her strength of character. And I think that those things might be easier to kind of think about from a role play perspective, and how you might look at this character's, stats. Um, with role play ideas with this character too, outside of combat, um, you know, she's helping people, right? So this large form, we can lift people up, we can push, we can pull people to us, maybe across threats, environmental. Maybe we're running away. We need to put something in front of our adversaries as we're running away. She can move things with her mind, with the wind. Maybe somebody's falling, and with our pull, our telekinetic pull, we can only pull them 5 feet, but maybe that's just enough. Or maybe with our flight, we're flying and we're grabbing them, right? We can do that all in one action. We move 70 feet, we pick them up, we grab them, so maybe we're going 35 and then 35 back. So outside of combat, there's a lot of other things that she can do, not just rely on her sword or her axe. And when we're thinking about the role play ideas, that's what I want people to think about, in terms of that a character can use their abilities in interesting ways, not just when we're looking at the battle aspect of it. When she's reading minds, she can help her. Let's say that there's a bard, right? And they're trying to persuade or deceive someone. Maybe Arda just reads that person's mind and then telepathically can say, hey, this is what that person's thinking. We have a thing called the help action. It gives someone advantage on a check, ability check. Maybe that's how Arda helps someone. Or maybe they're intimidating. Maybe Arda, she uses that telekinetic push that we just got at level 12 to kind of push someone 5 feet away as a little bit of an intimidation check, and that's how we're helping someone else with an intimidation. So let's say that we have a paladin who's trying to be, authoritative and intimidate someone, and Arda's just standing there, and they kind of give a little push mentally, and that's how they help. Or maybe they're using their telepathy in a way to, hey, I see this that you might not see. So this might help you in this situation. So when we say like the help action and a DM says, well, how are you helping? Arda has a lot of different ways she can help through, reading minds or speaking into minds or being intimidating. She's using her force of will on the environment to help her friends. What are some of the other things that we have with Arda? We talked about the large form. We talked about how it can, lift big things. Maybe even large and flying to get us places that we don't normally can get to. So this is something where like we want our mage or our wizard or our cleric to save spells, and this is just something that we can do. So by expending your resources, you're saving maybe the resources of another person in the party. And again, D&D is collaborative, so it's how you're helping them, saving them from utilizing resources, how you're getting over obstacles together, how you're spotlighting each other. That's really important in D&D. So when we look at Arda Cloudmane, I think, when we look at how protective she is, we ground that role play in how she moves about the battlefield, and what kind of things that she can do. I hope that everybody watching can see that, it's very well rounded, that her RP, her role play, that protective nature, that strong-headedness, that willpower really manifests in this Psy Warrior build. And we can reskin it a different way. And that's really what we're doing with this channel. So I hope that this has given you some ideas to use in your own play, that you can kind of reskin things. Like we said, like force can be wind, and how you can use the mechanics of something in new and interesting ways to help your allies. You're not just a sheet. You have tricks that you can bring. And I hope that was, good for, it was something that interesting for all of you. But we'll be going through some more characters as this channel grows and progresses. So I hope you'll stay with me. I hope you enjoyed this first episode. And I hope you all will get out there and get creative.